I still remember that night clearly, even though I've tried for years to forget it. It was late October, 2 days before Halloween, and the air already carried that cold bite that makes you want to stay inside. I had just moved back to my hometown after living away for work, trying to help my younger brother settle into college. Things felt different there, quieter, emptier somehow. Most of the houses on our old street had new owners now, but my childhood home still stood at the end, next to a row of tall birch trees that looked like bones at night. That evening, my brother Ethan had texted me, asking if I could pick him up from a friend's house since he'd stayed late working on a film project. I didn't really feel like driving, but he didn't have his own car yet, so I agreed. It was around 9:30 when I got in my truck. The roads were almost empty. Halloween decorations blinked faintly from porches, pumpkins, fake cobwebs, skeletons hanging from trees. But the town itself felt like it was holding its breath. On my way to him, I passed a small park I used to visit as a kid. The swings creaked even though no one was there, moving just a little with the wind. I tried not to look too long. It's strange how places from your childhood can feel safe in the daylight and completely wrong at night. Ethan was waiting outside his friend's house, holding a camera bag and a box of props. He was smiling, talking about how they were editing a short horror film for school. He said it like a joke, but I remember thinking how weird it was that he chose horror. Of all things, we talked about it for a bit while driving back, and for a moment it felt normal again. Just two brothers catching up. Then, maybe 15 minutes from home, the truck's headlights caught something on the side of the road. At first, I thought it was a trash bag, but as we got closer, it moved. Someone was standing there. A person in a long, dark coat, facing the woods. They didn't react to our lights, didn't turn, didn't flinch, just stood still. Ethan saw it too and went quiet. I slowed down, thinking maybe they needed help, but something in my stomach said not to stop. The coat looked too heavy, almost like it was made from something thick and old. I drove on, telling myself it was probably a hunter or a lost camper. We didn't say much after that. The radio was off, the road empty. When we turned onto our street, I saw a faint light flicker near the birch trees beside our house. Probably one of the Halloween lanterns, I thought. But when we pulled into the driveway, I noticed it again, a dim orange glow deep between the trees, like a cigarette tip or a small candle. Ethan saw it too and frowned. "Do you see that?" he asked. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Probably some kids," but neither of us moved. It stayed there for a few seconds, then went out. Inside, I locked the doors, something I normally didn't do so quickly. We both tried to act like nothing happened. Ethan went to his room to upload his footage, and I made coffee even though it was close to 11. That's when I noticed movement outside the kitchen window. Not much, just a faint shift of shadow past the trees. I told myself it was a branch moving, or maybe a car like passing through. But my heart was already racing. Ethan came downstairs a few minutes later and asked if I had left my truck lights on. I said no. He motioned for me to follow him to the window overlooking the driveway. The headlights were faintly glowing, not bright, just like someone had lightly tapped them on. I grabbed my keys and clicked the remote to turn them off. They stayed on dot then, slowly. They flashed twice, the exact way my remote key fob worked when unlocking the doors. Ethan stared at me. "Did you press it?" "No," I said quietly. We stood there, frozen, as the headlights blinked again. And that's when we both heard it. A soft metallic sound from outside, like the driver's door handle being tested. I didn't move at first. The sound was so faint that for a second I thought I imagined it. Then it came again, slow, careful, like whoever was outside didn't want to make noise, but also wasn't trying too hard to hide. Ethan whispered, "Maybe it's the wind." But we both knew it wasn't. The night was still, no breeze at all. I walked toward the front door quietly, trying to see through the small window beside it. My truck sat in the driveway, headlights dim again, no movement that I could spot. I leaned closer, squinting through the glass. And that's when I caught it something shifting at the edge of the trees near the fence. A shape, tall and still, like someone was standing just beyond the light. My first thought went back to that person on the road. The coat, the way they stood facing the woods. "Stay here," I whispered to Ethan, but he followed me anyway. We went to the living room where the curtains were open, giving a better view of the yard. For a moment, everything was still. Then, from the darkness between the birch trees, we saw a small, faint light again. It wasn't a flashlight, it flickered unevenly, like a candle or lighter being shielded from the wind. Ethan whispered, "That's the same light we saw earlier." I nodded slowly. The light moved closer, step by step, until it stopped halfway between the trees and the fence. Then it went out again. I tried to calm myself, telling Ethan it was probably someone playing a prank. But something about the way the light moved didn't feel playful. It was slow, intentional. I decided to step out onto the porch. The boards creaked softly under my feet as I opened the door. The air outside was colder than before. My breath hung in front of me, white against the dark. The driveway looked empty. The truck was silent now. No lights. I took a few steps toward it, scanning the yard. The street beyond was quiet, no passing cars, no voices, not even the hum of insects, just silence. I was halfway down the porch steps when I heard a soft crack from the trees, like a footstep on a dry branch. I froze. The sound came again, closer. Ethan whispered sharply from behind me, "Someone's there." I turned toward him, and in that split second, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. A figure stepped out from between the birch trunks. They were wearing a long coat, just like before. The same shape, same stillness. The person stood at the edge of the light from the porch, their face hidden by the shadow of the hood. "Hey," I called out, trying to sound firm even though my throat felt dry. "Who's out there?" No answer. The figure didn't move. "Are you lost?" I tried again. "This is private property." Still nothing. Just silence. I took one step forward, and that's when the figure tilted its head slightly to one side. It wasn't much, but the motion felt wrong, slow and deliberate, like it was studying me. My stomach twisted. Ethan pulled on my arm. "Come inside," man. I hesitated for a moment longer before backing up toward the door. The figure stayed exactly where it was. As soon as we got inside, I locked the door and killed the lights. We both crouched near the window, peeking through a gap in the curtain. The figure was still standing there, facing the house. Minutes passed. My legs started to ache from crouching, but I didn't want to move. Ethan whispered, "Should we call someone?" "Yeah," I said, reaching for my phone. Just as I started to dial, the figure turned and walked back into the trees. Not fast, not running, just slow steps until the darkness swallowed them. We waited another 10 minutes, but they didn't come back. Ethan finally exhaled and sat down on the couch, rubbing his face. "What the hell was that?" "I don't know," I said, "but we're not staying here tonight." He nodded without arguing. We packed a few things in Silent's wallets, keys, phones. I was about to grab my jacket when I remembered the truck keys were still in my pocket. I looked out the window one last time. The driveway was empty, everything calm again. We stepped onto the porch together. The air was colder, sharper. The night felt too quiet. As we walked toward the truck, Ethan whispered, "Did you lock it earlier?" "I think so," I said. When we reached it, I realized both doors were slightly open, just a few inches, like someone had checked them but didn't shut them all the way. Ethan's voice cracked. "You locked the doors, right?" Before I could answer, something in the trees clicked like a lighter being flicked on. The orange light flickered again. This time, closer. The flame danced weakly for a second, just bright enough to show part of a face behind it. The light caught the edge of a jawline and a pale cheek, then vanished again. I grabbed Ethan's arm and whispered, "Get in the truck." We both climbed in fast, shutting the doors quietly but locking them hard. The engine started on the first try, and the headlights sliced through the yard. But the light from the trees was gone again. Ethan was breathing fast. "Let's go. Let's go." I backed out of the driveway, trying to keep my eyes on the road. But I couldn't stop glancing in the mirror. The birch trees flashed past in the light, their white bark almost glowing. For a second, I thought I saw someone standing just beyond them again. But it might have been my mind filling in what it wanted to see. I drove fast until we reached the main road. Only then did Ethan finally start talking. Why would someone do that? Just stand there like that? "I don't know," I said, gripping the wheel. "Probably some lunatic messing around." He didn't answer, and we rode in silence for a while. The town was quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't done with it. The night had that kind of stillness that makes sound travel too far, every small noise ringing louder than it should. We decided to crash at my friend Nora's place. She lived across town, near the gas station. When we got there, I knocked softly, not wanting to wake her neighbors. She opened the door looking sleepy, but let us in right away when she saw our faces. "What happened?" she asked. I told her most of it, leaving out the part about the truck doors being open. I didn't want to sound paranoid. She made coffee while we sat in her living room. The house was warm, lights soft, and for a few minutes, it almost felt normal again. Then Ethan's phone buzzed. He looked at it, frowning. A known number. He opened the message and turned pale. It was a photo taken from outside. It showed my truck parked in Nora's driveway. There was no caption. I stared at it for a long time, trying to understand how someone could have taken it without us noticing. Nora looked from me to Ethan. "You're kidding, right?" I took the phone from him and looked closer. The photo was dark, grainy, but you could tell it was recent. The streetlights matched, and my jacket was visible through the windshield, draped over the seat. Whoever sent it had been right outside, maybe minutes ago. "Call the police," Nora said immediately. We did. 2 officers came within 20 minutes. We told them everything: the person on the road, the figure near the trees, the lights, the photo. They took notes and looked around the yard but didn't find anyone. One of them said, "It's probably some kids pulling a prank. Happens every year." I wanted to believe that, but it didn't fit. Kids don't follow people home. They don't take pictures of parked cars in different neighborhoods within an hour. The police left after checking the area, telling us to call again if anything else happened. Nora offered us the guest room. We tried to sleep, but every sound outside made me tense. Around 2 in the morning, I got up and went to the kitchen for water. As I walked past the window, I noticed something on the glass, small, faint smudges, like fingertips. I leaned closer. The marks were on the outside. I turned off the lights, trying to see into the yard, but the reflection from inside made it hard. Then I caught a movement near the edge of the lawn, someone walking away slowly, disappearing between 2 parked cars. My throat went dry. I stayed still until they were gone. When I got back to the guest room, Ethan was sitting up. "You saw it too, didn't you?" I hesitated. "What did you see?" He swallowed hard. "Someone standing by the window." I thought it was my imagination. We didn't sleep after that. By morning, there was a strange quiet in the house. The sun came through weakly, but it didn't feel like daylight changed anything. Before we left, I checked the driveway. Nothing looked out of place. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever it was wasn't done with us yet. Later that day, I went back to our place to grab more clothes. Ethan stayed at Nora's. The house was still, cold from being empty all night. I walked through each room, checking the locks, the windows, even under the porch light. Everything seemed fine until I reached the kitchen. The back door was open, not wide, just enough to see the wind stirring the curtain. And on the counter, right beside the coffee maker, lay a small folded piece of paper. It had one line written on it, in uneven handwriting: "You forgot to turn your lights off again." My hands went cold as I stared at the note. It was written on a torn piece of brown paper, the kind you get from grocery bags. I didn't touch it right away. I just kept staring, trying to make sense of it. Whoever left it had been inside. There was no other explanation. The police had told us it was probably kids. But kids don't walk into your kitchen while you're gone, leave a message like that, and then disappear. I picked up the paper carefully with a tissue and folded it into a sandwich bag. Then I checked the locks again: front, side, basement door. Everything was still locked except that back door. The lock wasn't broken. It had just been turned from the inside. When I stepped out into the backyard, The morning light made the birch trees look softer, almost harmless. It was hard to believe that same stretch of yard had felt so threatening last night. The grass near the porch was wet with dew, but there were faint marks near the step shoe prints, larger than mine. I backed away and went inside, locking the door again. My first instinct was to call the police, but I knew what they'd say. "We'll send someone to look around." Then they'd find nothing again. I wanted proof first, so I set up my old security camera system. It was just a few small wireless cameras I'd bought years ago for my apartment. I placed one by the porch, one near the back door, one facing the driveway. I kept one inside the kitchen window, hidden behind a curtain. Ethan texted me around noon, asking if I was okay. I told him about the note, and he said to get out of the house. I said I would, but I didn't leave. Something in me wanted to catch whoever it was. That night, I stayed downstairs on the couch with the lights off and my phone connected to the camera. The house made the usual noises, pipes, settling wood, but each creak made me jump. Hours passed, nothing. Then, around 2:40 a.m., I heard a faint sound from outside. Not footsteps this time, something softer, like a light scrape against the wall. I looked at the camera feed on my phone. The one facing the porch showed nothing. Then the feed from the kitchen flickered. For half a second, the image glitched, and when it cleared, I saw a shape in the window reflection. A person, standing just outside the back door. They weren't moving, just standing. Their face wasn't clear, but the outline was the same long coat I'd seen before. I sat there frozen, staring at the screen. My phone buzzed, and I nearly dropped it. It was a notification from the camera app, motion detected, backyard. The live feed showed the figure turning slowly toward the window, as if they knew I was watching. The hood shifted, and the faint porch light caught their face for the first time. It wasn't a mask. It was a man, mid-30s maybe, clean-shaven, eyes wide open and unblinking. His skin looked pale, like he hadn't seen sunlight in months. He stepped closer to the glass, and for a second, his mouth moved. No sound came through, but it looked like he was whispering something. Then, without warning, the camera went black. I stayed completely still, waiting for noise, footsteps. A door creak, anything but the silence just stretched on. After a few minutes, I gathered enough courage to look through the blinds. The yard was empty, no movement. The trees barely shifted in the wind. I called the police again. This time, they sent a patrol car immediately. 2 officers came inside, checked the property, walked around with flashlights, but again nothing. They reviewed the footage with me, but the video cut out right before the man's face appeared clearly. One of the officers said, "Could be a camera glitch." They promised to drive by a few extra times that week, but I could tell they didn't believe how serious it felt. After they left, I sat at the kitchen table until sunrise, watching the trees outside turn from black to gray. I told myself I'd move in with Ethan for a few days, maybe stay with Nora again. I packed a small bag, ready to leave as soon as I could. But when I walked outside to put it in the truck, I stopped. There was something under the wiper blade, a small square of brown paper. Folded once. I unfolded it slowly. The same uneven handwriting. You shouldn't have called them. For a few seconds, I just stood there staring at the note. The morning light cutting across the windshield. The handwriting looked exactly the same as before, same thick, uneven strokes. Like whoever wrote it had pressed down too hard with the pen. I didn't even finish reading the rest before I looked around. The street was empty. No cars, no people walking their dogs, no sound except a crow calling from somewhere far off. I slipped the note into my jacket pocket and got in the truck. The seats were cold. My hands shook as I started the engine. I drove straight to Ethan's campus. He was already outside waiting, backpack on, like he hadn't slept either. When he saw me, he knew something was wrong. What happened? He asked as soon as he got in. I handed him the note. He read it quietly and whispered, "They know." "I don't know how," I said. "Maybe they saw the police car." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "We can't go back there." I nodded. "We won't." We went to Nora's place again. But this time I parked a block away and walked the rest of the distance. I didn't want anyone knowing where we were staying. She didn't ask questions, just let us in and made coffee again. That became our thing. Coffee meant calm. Something normal to hold on to. Around noon, I got a message from an unknown number. It wasn't a photo this time, just a sentence. "You left the camera on." I felt the bottom drop out of my stomach. Ethan read it over my shoulder, and for a second, neither of us breathed. Nora asked what was wrong, and I just showed her the screen. She looked at us like she didn't believe it at first, then locked every door in the house. We sat together in the living room with the curtains drawn. I called the police again, gave them the number, explained everything. But they said the texts weren't enough to trace. They'd make a report, but without a clear threat, there wasn't much they could do. That night, none of us slept. Every small sound made us jump. At one point around 3, Nora said she saw car lights flash outside. But when I checked, nothing was there. By morning, the silence felt heavier. I told Ethan we needed to go back to the house one last time, grab the rest of our stuff, and then leave town for a while. He didn't want to, but I convinced him it would be quick. When we got there, the yard looked normal to normal. The porch light was off, the door still locked. I unlocked it slowly, half expecting something to fall over or move. Nothing did. Inside, everything was where I'd left it. We packed fast. Clothes, camera gear, some papers. I went to unplug the security cameras, and when I opened the app to turn them off, I froze. The last clip was from 2 hours ago, right before sunrise. The feed showed the living room from the camera on the bookshelf. A shadow moved across the frame, slow, deliberate. Then a man stepped into view. Same long coat, hood down this time. He walked to the couch, leaned down, and looked straight into the camera lens. It was me. Not someone who looked like me. My jacket, my haircut, even the small scar on my chin from when I was a kid. The video showed me standing there, staring into the lens for 5 long seconds before turning and walking toward the kitchen. Ethan's voice cracked. "That's not possible. You were with me." I replayed it 3 times. It was clear. The timestamp didn't lie. I deleted the footage right after. I don't know why panic. Maybe, but I didn't want it there. We left the house without saying much. I didn't even look back as I locked the door for the last time. It's been 6 months now. I moved to another city. Ethan transferred schools. Nora sold her house. We don't talk about that night anymore. Though sometimes I wake up thinking I heard footsteps outside my window. Last week, I got another text from an unknown number. It was a photo again taken from behind me while I was standing in line at a gas station. The caption said, "You still don't lock your doors right." I didn't answer. I just deleted it and kept driving. But part of me knows he's still out there, watching and sometimes when I park my truck at night. I swear the headlights blink twice just like they did that first time.